community center reeked of cheap cologne and desperation. Halloween decorations hung like funeral shrouds from water-stained ceiling tiles, and the disco ball cast fractured light across faces I'd known my whole life in this dying Rust Belt town. I nursed my third beer, watching my wife Renee work the room in her tight black dress, playing the part of some vampire seductress. She'd always been beautiful, the kind of woman who turned heads at the grocery store and made other wives clutch their husbands' arms a little tighter. But tonight, something felt different. Wrong. She kept glancing toward the far corner where Derek Matthews held court with his usual crowd of gym rats and wannabe tough guys. Derek, the golden boy of Millfield, Ohio, owner of Iron Temple Fitness, with his perfectly styled hair and teeth so white they probably glowed in the dark. The kind of guy who drove a Mustang at 38 and still thought he was the high school quarterback. I should have seen it coming. Hell, maybe I did see it and just chose to ignore it. That's what we do in small towns. We ignore the obvious until it slaps us in the face. And tonight, it was about to slap me hard. Jake, you look like someone stole your lunch money. Eddie Morrison appeared beside me, his weathered face creased with concern. My best friend since childhood, now owner of Murphy's Tavern, and the closest thing this town had to a wise man. Just thinking, I said, watching Renee laugh at something Derek whispered in her ear. About how I used to box. Remember those days? When problems had simple solutions? You were good too. Could have gone somewhere if you hadn't blown out your shoulder. Eddie followed my gaze. What's eating you, brother? Before I could answer, the music shifted to something slow and sultry. The crowd thinned as couples moved together, and that's when I saw it happen. Clear as day, like watching a car accident in slow motion. Renee moved toward Derek, her hips swaying with practiced seduction. He met her halfway, his hands finding her waist with the familiarity of long practice. And then, God help me, she pressed her lips to his like I wasn't standing 20 feet away, like our 15-year marriage meant nothing, like I was invisible. The beer bottle slipped from my numb fingers, shattering against the linoleum floor. A few people turned to look, but most were too drunk or too polite to notice my world crumbling in real time. Jesus Christ, Eddie breathed beside me. I stood frozen, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. This wasn't a quick peck between friends. This was passion, hunger, the kind of kiss that spoke of intimate knowledge and shared secrets. Renee's fingers tangled in Derek's hair while his hands roamed her back, and neither of them seemed to give a damn who was watching. That's when Sierra Walsh materialized at my elbow like some dark angel of revelation. Renee's best friend since college, with her sharp cheekbones and sharper tongue. She'd always made me nervous, too smart, too observant, too willing to say the things others only thought. I'm sorry, Jake, she said quietly, her voice barely audible over the music. I didn't want to be the one to tell you, but you had to see it eventually. I turned to her, my throat dry as sandpaper. Tell me what? Sierra's green eyes held a mixture of pity and something else. Satisfaction, maybe? That's not some random guy she's kissing. That's Derek, her lover. It's been going on for months. The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. Months? Since spring, at least. Maybe longer. Sierra stepped closer, her perfume mixing with the smell of stale beer and broken dreams. I kept hoping it would burn itself out, that she'd come to her senses. But look at them, Jake. Does that look like something that's ending? I looked. Renee and Derek were still locked together, oblivious to everything but each other. Other people were starting to notice now, whispers rippling through the crowd like poison in a well. Why didn't you tell me sooner? My voice sounded strange, disconnected. Because I'm her friend. Was her friend. Sierra's jaw tightened. But watching her humiliate you like this? It's not right. You deserve better. The rational part of my brain knew I should walk away, leave quietly, preserve what little dignity I had left. But 15 years of marriage, of building a life together, of believing in something that was apparently built on lies, that doesn't just die quietly. I started walking toward them, my vision tunneling until all I could see was my wife's hands on another man's body. The crowd seemed to part before me like the Red Sea, and I heard someone whisper, "Oh shit, here comes Jake. Renee." My voice cut through the music like a blade. They broke apart, Renee's lipstick smeared, Derek's shirt wrinkled where her hands had been. For a moment, nobody moved. The entire party seemed to hold its breath. "Jake!" Renee's face went white beneath her makeup. We were just what?" I stepped closer, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. "Just dancing. Just being friendly?" Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Derek straightened to his full height, trying to look intimidating. Look, man, maybe you should... I cut him off with a look that made him take a step back. 20 years of construction work and 10 years of boxing had left me with hands that could break bones, and a reputation that preceded me. Derek might have muscles, but I had scars. How long? I asked Renee, my voice deadly quiet. Jake, please, not here. How? Long? She glanced around at the watching faces, then back at me. It's not what you think. Then tell me what it is. Tell me why my wife is tongue-deep in another man's mouth at a party we came to together. The silence stretched like a rubber band about to snap. Someone's phone was probably recording this whole thing. By tomorrow, it would be all over social media, shared and commented on by every gossip in Millfield. I think we should take this somewhere private, Derek said, trying to sound reasonable. That's when something inside me snapped. I grabbed my beer from a nearby table and threw it in Derek's face, the amber liquid dripping from his perfect hair onto his expensive shirt. There's your privacy, asshole. Then I turned to Renee, my wife of 15 years, the mother of my daughter, and said the words that would haunt me for months. We're done. Pack your shit and get out. I walked away then, pushing through the crowd of gawking faces, leaving behind the wreckage of my marriage and whatever remained of my dignity. Behind me, I could hear Renee calling my name, but I didn't look back. Outside, the October air hit my face like a slap. I stood in the parking lot, breathing hard, my hands shaking with rage and something that might have been relief. At least now I knew, after months of suspicion and doubt, I finally knew the truth. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. There's more you need to know. Call me. Sierra. I stared at the message, wondering what else could possibly be worse than what I'd just witnessed. Then I deleted it and drove home to an empty house that suddenly felt like a tomb. The next morning brought a hangover and a phone that wouldn't stop buzzing. Text messages, missed calls, Facebook notifications. The whole town was talking about what happened at the Halloween party. In a place like Millfield, population 12,000 and shrinking, a public marital meltdown was better than cable television. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago, trying to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do next. The house felt different without Renee's presence, quieter, but also somehow larger, like I could breathe again for the first time in months. My phone rang. Eddie. How you holding up, brother? Like a man who just found out his wife's been screwing the local pretty boy. I rubbed my eyes, feeling every one of my 42 years. Could be better. You want to talk about it? Not really, but I guess I should probably figure out what comes next. Lawyer? The word hung in the air like smoke. Lawyer meant divorce papers, custody battles, dividing up 15 years of accumulated stuff. It meant making this nightmare official. Yeah, probably. I know a guy. Discreet, tough when he needs to be. Want me to make a call? Give me his number. I'll call him myself. After Eddie hung up, I sat in the silence for a while, listening to the house settle around me. This place had been our dream once. A modest 2-story colonial with a big backyard and room for the family we'd planned to have. We'd gotten Maddie, our daughter, now 16, and away at her mother's sister's place in Cleveland for the weekend. Thank God she hadn't been at that party. The front door opened without a knock. Renee still had her key. I heard her heels clicking across the hardwood floor. Then she appeared in the kitchen doorway like a guilty ghost. She'd changed out of the vampire costume into jeans and a sweater, her makeup scrubbed away to reveal the face I'd fallen in love with 20 years ago. She looked tired, older somehow, as if the events of last night had aged her. We need to talk, she said. Do we? She sat down across from me without invitation, her hands folded on the table. About last night. About everything. What's to talk about? You've been fucking Derek Matthews. I saw it with my own eyes. She flinched at my bluntness. It's not that simple, isn't it? I leaned back in my chair, studying her face. You made a choice, Renee. Multiple choices, apparently. Now I'm making mine. Jake, please. I know how it looked, but what? But you were just pretending to be in love with another man? But it was all some elaborate joke? Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I never meant for it to happen. It just did. Bullshit. The word came out harder than I intended. Things like this don't just happen. You made a decision every single time you met him, every time you lied to me, every time you came home and pretended everything was normal. You don't understand what it's been like. Then explain it to me. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. I felt invisible, like I was disappearing a little more every day. You'd come home from work, eat dinner, watch TV, go to bed. We barely talked anymore. I felt like I was living with a stranger. So you decided to fuck someone else instead of talking to me about it? It wasn't supposed to be anything serious. Derek was just... He made me feel alive again, beautiful, wanted. And I didn't? When was the last time you really looked at me, Jake? I mean really looked at me, not just glanced up from your phone or the TV. The question hit closer to home than I wanted to admit. We had fallen into a routine over the years, the comfortable familiarity of long marriage. But comfortable had apparently become suffocating for her. So, this is my fault. No, yes, I don't know. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I'm not trying to blame you. I'm just trying to explain. Don't. I stood up, suddenly unable to sit still. Don't try to make this about our marriage problems. You want to know what our marriage problem was? You were in love with someone else. My phone buzzed on the table. Another text from Sierra. Check your bank account, now. I frowned, picking up the phone. What the hell? What is it? Renee asked. I was already pulling up my banking app, my heart sinking as I saw the numbers on the screen. Our joint checking account, which should have had about $8,000, showed a balance of $412. Where's our money, Renee? Her face went pale. What do you mean? I mean, our checking account is empty. Where did $7,500 go? She opened her mouth, then closed it again, looking like a fish gasping for air. Renee, where's our money? Derek's gym was having some cash flow problems. You gave our money to Derek? It was a loan. He's going to pay it back. I laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the kitchen walls. Unfucking believable. You're not just cheating on me, you're funding it with our savings. It's not like that. Get out. Jake, get out of my house, now. She stood up slowly, tears streaming down her face. This doesn't have to end this way. We can work through this. No, we can't. Because every time I look at you, I'm going to see you with him. Every time you touch me, I'm going to wonder if you're thinking about him. Every time you say you love me, I'm going to remember that you said the same thing to him. She stood there for a moment longer, then turned and walked away. I heard the front door close behind her, and then I was alone again. My phone rang. Sierra. Did you check the account? Yeah, how did you know? Because I helped her move the money. The admission hit me like a physical blow. You what? I drove her to the bank 3 weeks ago. She said it was for some emergency home repair, but when I saw her with Derek last night, I put 2 and 2 together. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm tired of watching her destroy everything good in her life, including you. I was quiet for a moment, processing this new betrayal. Not only had Renee been cheating, but she'd been lying about money, and her best friend had been helping her do it. There's something else, Sierra continued. Something you need to know about Derek. I'm listening. He's not just sleeping with your wife. He's sleeping with half the married women in this town. This is what he does, Jake. He finds unhappy wives and makes them feel special, gets them to give him money, then moves on to the next one. The pieces started falling into place. Derek's expensive car, his flashy lifestyle, the gym that somehow stayed afloat despite never seeming to have many members. How do you know all this? Because I used to be one of them. The confession hung between us like a loaded gun. When? 2 years ago, right after my divorce. I was lonely, vulnerable, and he was there with his perfect smile and his bullshit about how beautiful I was. I gave him $5,000 before I figured out what he really was. Why didn't you warn Renee? I tried. She didn't want to hear it. Said I was just jealous. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of the whole situation settling on my shoulders like a lead blanket. My wife wasn't just cheating. She was being played by a professional con artist, and she was too infatuated to see it. What do you want from me, Sierra? I want to help you get your money back, and I want to make sure Derek Matthews never does this to another woman. What did you have in mind? Meet me tonight, Murphy's Tavern, 9 o'clock. Come alone. The line went dead, leaving me alone with my thoughts and a growing sense that this was just the beginning. Murphy's Tavern at 9 p.m. was a cathedral of broken dreams and cheap whiskey, the kind of place where the regulars knew each other's stories without asking, and newcomers were measured by how long they could sit in silence before needing to talk. I found Sierra in a corner booth, nursing a glass of red wine and looking like she belonged in some upscale restaurant instead of Eddie's dive bar. She'd changed into a black dress that hugged her curves in all the right places, and I found myself noticing things about her I'd never paid attention to before. "You came," she said as I slid into the booth across from her. "I'm here. Doesn't mean I trust you." Eddie appeared with a beer before I could ask for one. "On the house," he said, then disappeared back behind the bar with the discretion that had made him everyone's favorite bartender. "Smart man," Sierra said, watching Eddie walk away. "Knows when to listen and when to forget what he's heard. Let's skip the small talk. What do you want?" She leaned forward, her green eyes intense in the dim light. "I want Derek Matthews to pay for what he's done. To me, to your wife, to every woman he's manipulated and used. And how exactly do you propose we do that? By hitting him where it hurts. His reputation, his business, his ego." I took a long pull of my beer, studying her face. "You're talking about revenge." "I'm talking about justice. Same thing, sometimes." She smiled, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I might have found an ally. "Tell me about Derek's operation," I said. "It's simple, really. He targets married women who are feeling neglected or unappreciated. He's got a type, attractive, middle class, usually with access to money. He makes them feel special, tells them their husbands don't deserve them, gets them emotionally dependent on him. Then he asks for money? Always for the gym, equipment repairs, lease payments, some emergency that only they can help him with, and because they're in love with him, they give it to him. How many women are we talking about? That I know of? At least 6 in the past 2 years? Probably more." I did the math in my head. If each woman had given him what Renee had, Derek was pulling in $40,000 or $50,000 a year just from his side hustle. Not bad work for a small-town predator. What happened to the others? Same thing that's happening to Renee. He gets what he wants, then starts pulling away. Makes them feel like they're not good enough, that they need to try harder to keep his attention. Some of them leave their husbands for him, only to find out he's already moved on to someone new. Jesus. The worst part is, most of them are too ashamed to talk about it afterward. They blame themselves, think they were stupid for falling for it, so he just keeps getting away with it. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Your wife's a whore, and everyone knows it." I showed Sierra the message. She frowned. "You've been getting these?" "Started this afternoon. Anonymous numbers, social media accounts with fake names. Word travels fast in a small town." "This is exactly what he wants," Sierra said. "To isolate you, make you feel like everyone's against you. It's part of his pattern." "You think Derek's behind it?" "Derek or his friends. He's got a whole crew of guys who help him out, spread rumors, intimidate husbands who get too close to the truth." As if summoned by our conversation, the tavern door opened and 3 men walked in. I recognized them immediately, Derek's usual crew from the gym. Tony Ricci, a steroid-enhanced meathead with more muscles than brains. Steve Walsh, no relation to Sierra despite the name, a local mechanic with a reputation for dirty dealing. And bringing up the rear, Derek himself, looking like he owned the place. "Speak of the devil," Sierra muttered. They took seats at the bar, Derek making a show of ordering drinks and laughing loudly at his own jokes. But I could feel his eyes on our booth, could sense the tension radiating from his direction. "He knows we're here together," I said. "Good. Let him wonder what we're talking about." Derek's laugh got louder, more forced. He was trying to project confidence, but I could see the cracks in his facade. The perfect hair looked a little less perfect tonight, and there were stress lines around his eyes that hadn't been there at the party. "He's worried," Sierra observed, "probably wondering how much I've told you." "How much have you told me?" "About half of it." Before I could ask what she meant, Tony Ricci stood up from the bar and started walking toward our booth. 6 feet of artificially enhanced muscle wrapped in a tight t-shirt that showed off his gym routine. Well, well, he said, stopping beside our table. "Look what we have here. The cuckold and the crazy ex." I set my beer down carefully, my hands steady despite the adrenaline starting to flow through my system. "Something you need, Tony?" "Just wondering what you two are cooking up over here. Looks pretty cozy." Sierra smiled sweetly. "We're discussing your friend Derek's business practices. Very educational." Tony's face darkened. "I'd be careful about spreading lies, lady. Derek's got a lot of friends in this town." "And a lot of enemies," I said quietly. "The number seems to be growing every day." "You threatening him?" I stood up slowly, letting Tony see all 6 feet and 200 pounds of me. The boxing might have been 20 years ago, but the muscle memory was still there, and construction work had kept me in fighting shape. "I don't make threats, Tony. I make promises." For a moment, we stood there measuring each other. Tony had the size advantage, but I had experience and a whole lot of anger looking for an outlet. The bar had gone quiet, everyone waiting to see what would happen next. "Everything okay over here?" Eddie's voice cut through the tension. He'd moved out from behind the bar, a baseball bat in his hands that he held with casual familiarity. "Just having a conversation," Tony said, but he took a step back. "Conversation's over," Eddie replied. "Why don't you and your friends find somewhere else to drink tonight?" Derek appeared at Tony's shoulder, his perfect smile in place, but his eyes hard as flint. "No problem, Eddie. We were just leaving anyway." He looked at me, then at Sierra, then back at me. "Jake, I'm sorry about last night. Things got out of hand. Maybe we can sit down and talk this through like adults." "Nothing to talk about," I said. "You want my wife? You can have her, along with all the problems that come with her." Derek's smile faltered for just a moment. "It's not like that, man. Renee and it's complicated." "Seems pretty simple to me. You're fucking my wife and spending my money. The only complicated part is figuring out how I'm going to get it back." "Now hold on." "No, you hold on." I stepped closer, close enough to smell his expensive cologne and see the fear starting to creep into his eyes. "I know what you are, Derek. I know what you do, and I know you're not nearly as smart as you think you are." Sierra stood up beside me, her hand briefly touching my arm. "We should go." She was right. This wasn't the time or place for a confrontation. But as we walked toward the exit, Derek called after us. "Jake, your wife came to me, remember that. I didn't chase her, she chose me." And I stopped at the door, my hand on the handle, fighting the urge to turn around and show Derek exactly what 15 years of construction work had done to my right hook. "Let it go," Sierra whispered. "We've got bigger plans for him." Outside, the October air was sharp and clean after the stale atmosphere of the bar. Sierra walked with me to my truck, her heels clicking on the asphalt. "That went well," she said dryly. "He's scared. He should be. But scared animals are dangerous, Jake. He's going to come after you now, try to discredit you before you can expose him." "Let him try." She stopped beside my truck, looking up at me in the dim light from the street lamp. "There's something else I need to tell you, about why I'm really helping you." "I'm listening." "Derek didn't just take my money. He destroyed my marriage. My husband found out about the affair, about the money. He divorced me, took our daughter, moved to California. I haven't seen my little girl in over a year." The pain in her voice was real, raw. Whatever game she was playing, this part was genuine. "I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. Help me make him pay." She reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. "Everything I know about Derek's operation. Names, dates, bank records. Enough to bury him if we play it right." I took the envelope, feeling the weight of it in my hands. "What do you want in return?" "I want to watch his world burn, and I want to make sure he never hurts another family the way he hurt mine." She turned to walk away, then stopped. "Jake, be careful. Derek's not going to go down without a fight, and he's got more resources than you might think." I watched her disappear into the darkness, then got in my truck and drove home. The envelope sat on the passenger seat like a loaded gun, full of possibilities and dangers I was only beginning to understand. At home, I spread the contents across my kitchen table and began to read. By the time I finished, I knew Sierra was right about one thing. Derek Matthews was going down. The only question was how much damage he'd do on the way. The next morning brought a new reality. I woke up to find my truck's windshield smashed and "loser" spray-painted across the driver's side door. Derek's response to last night's conversation, no doubt. Subtle as always. I was sweeping glass off the driveway when my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, came over with her usual concerned expression and barely contained excitement at having front-row seats to neighborhood drama. "Oh my goodness, Jake, what happened?" "Vandals," I said simply. "This is terrible. Have you called the police?" I looked at the damage, then at Mrs. Patterson's eager face. In a town like Millfield, calling the cops about vandalism was like announcing your business on the evening news. By noon, everyone would know, and by evening, the story would have grown into an armed assault. "I'll handle it myself." "But Jake—" "Thanks for your concern, Mrs. Patterson. I've got it covered." She retreated to her house, probably already reaching for her phone to spread the news. I finished cleaning up the glass and drove to Eddie's bar, taking the back roads to avoid the morning gossip patrol. I found Eddie in his office, going through invoices and looking like a man who'd rather be anywhere else. "Heard you had some excitement last night," he said without looking up. "News travels fast." "Tony Ricci's been telling anyone who'll listen that you threatened Derek. Says you're planning something stupid." "Maybe I am." Eddie finally looked up, his weathered face serious. "Jake, I've known you since we were kids. You're not a stupid man. Don't start being one now. I sat down across from his desk and told him about the envelope Sierra had given me, about Derek's operation and the other women he'd victimized. Eddie listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each detail. "Son of a bitch," he said when I finished. "I knew Derek was a piece of shit, but it gets worse. I think he's been using the gym to launder money. Some of these bank deposits don't match up with any legitimate business income. You sure about this?" I pulled out one of Sierra's documents, a bank statement that showed regular cash deposits in round numbers, always 2,000 or 3,000 at a time, always on different days of the week. "Look at the pattern. No legitimate business makes deposits like this. It's either drug money or something else illegal." Eddie studied the papers, his bartender's instincts for reading people extending to reading financial documents. This could be enough to shut him down. "If we can prove it, what do you need?" "Access to his gym after hours, and someone who knows how to crack a safe." Eddie grinned. "I might know a guy." My phone buzzed. "Renee. We need to talk. It's about Maddie, my daughter." In all the chaos of the past 2 days, I'd almost forgotten she was supposed to come home from her aunt's place today. "What about her?" "She knows. About Derek. About everything. Someone at school showed her the video from the party." The video. Of course someone had recorded it. In the age of smartphones, every public humiliation was preserved for posterity and shared until it became digital folklore. "Where is she?" "At my sister's still. She doesn't want to come home. She's embarrassed, angry. She blames both of us." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of my daughter's pain added to everything else. Maddie was 16, old enough to understand what she'd seen, but too young to process the complexity of adult relationships and failures. "I'll drive up to Cleveland and talk to her." "Jake, maybe we should go together." "No, you've done enough damage." The line went quiet for a moment. When Renee spoke again, her voice was small, broken. "I know you hate me right now. I know I deserve it. But please don't let this destroy our daughter's relationship with both of us." She was right, and I hated her for it. Whatever else had happened between us, Maddie didn't deserve to lose both parents to this mess. "I'll bring her home tonight." "Thank you." After hanging up, I looked at Eddie. "Rain check on the gym. I need to go fix things with my daughter." "Family first," he agreed. "But Jake, when you get back, we're going to end this thing with Derek, one way or another." The drive to Cleveland gave me 2 hours to figure out what I was going to say to Maddie. How do you explain to your 16-year-old daughter that her mother is a cheater and her father is planning revenge? How do you help her understand that sometimes good people make terrible choices, and sometimes those choices destroy everything? I found her at my sister-in-law's house, sitting on the front porch with her earbuds in and her face set in the universal expression of teenage anger and embarrassment. She'd gotten her mother's looks, but my stubborn streak, a combination that had made her both beautiful and impossible since she turned 13. "Hey, kiddo." She pulled out one earbud but didn't look at me. "Don't call me kiddo. I'm not a kid anymore." "You're right. You're not." I sat down beside her on the porch steps, both of us looking out at the tree-lined street where nothing dramatic ever happened and families stayed together. "I saw the video," she said finally. "I figured. Everyone at school is talking about it, sharing it, making jokes. Do you know how humiliating that is?" "Yeah, actually, I do." She finally looked at me, her eyes red from crying. How could she do this to us? To you? It would have been easy to trash Renee, to make myself the victim and her the villain, but Maddie needed more than that from me. She needed honesty, even if it hurt. "Your mother made some bad choices, but it's not that simple, Maddie. Marriage is complicated, and sometimes people grow apart without realizing it. Sometimes they look for things outside the marriage that they should be looking for inside it." "Are you defending her?" "No, I'm trying to help you understand that people aren't just good or evil. They're complicated, and they make mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes have consequences that hurt everyone around them." "So what happens now? Are you getting divorced?" The question hung in the air between us. I hadn't said the word out loud yet, hadn't made it real. "Probably." "And I have to choose between you?" "No, you never have to choose. We're both your parents, and we both love you. That doesn't change, no matter what happens between your mother and me." She was quiet for a long time, processing this new reality. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller, more vulnerable. "I'm scared." "Of what?" "Of everything changing. Of our family being broken. Of people at school always remembering this and talking about it." I put my arm around her shoulders, and for the first time since she'd turned into a teenager, she didn't pull away. Change is scary, but sometimes things need to break before they can be fixed properly. And as for people talking, let them. Their opinions don't define you or our family. Will you be okay? Living alone, I mean? The question caught me off guard. Here was my daughter, dealing with her own pain and embarrassment, worried about me. I'll be fine. Better than fine, actually. I'm going to figure out who I am when I'm not trying to hold together something that was already broken. We sat there for a while longer, watching the sunset over Cleveland's suburbs and talking about practical things, school, her friends, where she'd live and when she'd visit. The conversation was hard but necessary, and by the time we loaded her stuff into my truck, something had shifted between us. "Dad?" she said as we pulled out of the driveway. "Yeah? I'm proud of you, for not hitting that guy at the party, for walking away instead of making it worse." If only she knew what I was planning to do when we got back to Millfield. But that was a conversation for another day, when she was older and better able to understand that sometimes walking away isn't enough. "Thanks, kiddo. That means everything to me." She didn't correct me this time about calling her kiddo. Maybe she wasn't as grown up as she thought, or maybe she realized that some things were worth holding on to, even when everything else was falling apart. As we drove through the darkness toward home, I made a decision. Whatever happened with Derek, whatever revenge Sierra and I were planning, I wouldn't let it destroy what was left of my relationship with my daughter. Some things were more important than getting even. But that didn't mean I was going to let Derek Matthews get away with what he'd done. It just meant I was going to be smarter about how I brought him down. 3 days later, I was ready to make my move. Sierra had provided more than just financial records. She'd given me Derek's complete schedule, his habits, his weaknesses, and most importantly, his safe combination. Apparently, he'd been arrogant enough to use the same combination for years, and Sierra had memorized it during their affair. The plan was simple but effective. Derek closed the gym alone every Tuesday night, staying late to count the day's receipts and make his weekly bank deposits. He'd be there until at least 10 p.m., giving us a window to get in and out with the evidence we needed. Eddie had recruited his guy, Tommy Chen, a former locksmith who'd served time for breaking and entering but had gone straight after getting out 5 years ago. Tommy owed Eddie a favor from the old days, and he was willing to help as long as we promised no one would get hurt. "This is about justice, right?" Tommy asked as we sat in Eddie's office, going over the plan one more time. "Not just revenge?" "Both," I said honestly, "but mostly justice." Good enough for me. Derek Matthews screwed over my cousin's wife 2 years ago. Took her for $8,000 and left her marriage in ruins. It seemed like everyone in Millfield had a Derek Matthews story. The man had been busy. Sierra arrived at 9 p.m., dressed in black jeans and a dark sweater, looking like she was ready for a covert operation, which I supposed she was. "He's still there," she reported. "I drove by 20 minutes ago. His car's in the lot, lights are on in the office." "Security system?" Tommy asked. "Basic alarm, motion detectors in the main gym area, but not in the office. He's too cheap for a comprehensive system." We waited until 10:15, then made our move. The gym was located in a strip mall on the edge of town, surrounded by empty parking lots and closed businesses. Perfect for what we needed to do. Tommy had the back door open in less than 2 minutes, his skilled hands making quick work of Derek's bargain basement locks. We slipped inside, moving carefully through the darkened gym toward the office in the back. Derek's office was a shrine to his own ego, framed photos of himself posing with various muscle-bound clients, certificates from fitness organizations, and a wall of mirrors that let him admire himself while he worked. The safe was exactly where Sierra had said it would be, built into the wall behind his desk. "You sure about the combination?" Tommy whispered. "His birthday," Sierra said. The narcissistic bastard never changed it. Tommy spun the dial, and the safe opened with a satisfying click. Inside, we found exactly what we'd hoped for: bundles of cash, bank deposit slips, and a ledger that detailed Derek's side business in devastating detail. But it was the manila folder in the back of the safe that made this whole operation worthwhile. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, showing Derek with various women in compromising positions. Some I recognized as local wives and divorcees, others were strangers, probably from neighboring towns. "Jesus Christ," Eddie breathed, looking over my shoulder. "He's been documenting everything." "Insurance," Sierra said grimly. "In case any of the women tried to expose him, he'd have leverage to keep them quiet." I flipped through the photos, feeling sick. These weren't just trophies. They were weapons. Derek had been systematically destroying marriages and families, then using the evidence to ensure his victims stayed silent. "We need to copy everything," I said. "The ledger, the photos, the bank records, then put it all back exactly as we found it. Tommy had brought a portable scanner, and we spent the next 30 minutes documenting Derek's crimes. The ledger alone was enough to destroy him. It showed payments from dozens of women over the past 3 years, totaling more than $200,000. "This is bigger than we thought," Sierra said as we worked. "He's not just running a local operation. Look at these addresses. Women from 3 different counties." She was right. Derek had built a regional empire of manipulation and extortion, using his gym as a front and his charm as a weapon. The scope of it was breathtaking and sickening. We were almost finished when we heard a car door slam in the parking lot. "Shit," Tommy hissed. "Someone's here." I moved to the window and peered through the blinds. A police cruiser had pulled up next to Derek's Mustang, and Officer Ray Kowalski was getting out, flashlight in hand. "Routine patrol," Eddie whispered. "Ray always checks the strip mall on Tuesday nights." "Can we get out the back?" Sierra asked. "Not without triggering the motion detectors in the main gym." We were trapped. If Ray found us here, everything would be ruined. Worse, Derek would know someone was onto him, and he'd destroy the evidence before we could use it. "I'll handle this," I said, moving toward the office door. "Jake, no." But I was already walking through the gym, my hands visible, trying to look like someone who belonged there. I opened the front door just as Ray was reaching for his radio. "Evening, Ray." "Jake, what the hell are you doing here?" Ray Kowalski and I had gone to high school together. He was a good cop, but not the brightest bulb in the box, which worked in my favor right now. "Derek asked me to meet him here. We're trying to work things out, about Renee." Ray's expression softened. He'd probably heard all the gossip about my marriage, and like most people in town, he felt sorry for me. "That's good, Jake. Real mature of you both. Derek inside?" "Yeah, he's in the office. We were just finishing up." "Well, I won't keep you. Just doing my rounds." Ray got back in his cruiser and drove away, leaving me standing in the doorway with my heart pounding. I waited until his taillights disappeared, then went back inside. "Coast is clear," I announced. "That was either brilliant or insane," Sierra said. "Little of both." We finished copying the documents and put everything back exactly as we'd found it. By midnight, we were back at Eddie's bar, spreading our evidence across a table in the back room and planning our next move. "We could take this to the police," Tommy suggested. "And say what?" Sierra replied. "That we broke into his gym and stole his private records? Even if they believed us about the money laundering, we'd be the ones going to jail." She was right. We needed a different approach, something that would expose Derek without implicating ourselves. "What if we didn't go to the police?" I said slowly, an idea forming. "What if we went to his victims instead?" "Explain." "We know who these women are from the ledger and the photos. What if we contacted them, let them know they weren't alone, that there are others, and that together they could bring Derek down?" Sierra smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her since this whole thing started. "A coordinated attack. Multiple complaints filed simultaneously, backed up by documented evidence of his pattern of behavior." "Exactly. Even if the police can't use our evidence directly, they can investigate based on the complaints and find their own proof." "It's brilliant," Eddie said. "Derek's whole operation depends on keeping his victims isolated and ashamed. If they realize they're part of a pattern, that shame turns into anger." We spent the rest of the night planning our campaign. Sierra would reach out to the women she knew personally, while I would contact the others through anonymous letters containing copies of the evidence we'd gathered. We'd coordinate the timing so that all the complaints would be filed within a few days of each other, creating a tsunami of accusations that Derek couldn't possibly deflect. "There's one more thing," Sierra said as we prepared to leave. "Something that will make this personal for Derek." "What do you mean?" She smiled, and there was something predatory in her expression that made me understand why Derek should have been more careful about making enemies. "I mean, it's time for him to find out what it feels like to be betrayed by someone he trusts." As I drove home that night, I felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks. Hope. Not just for revenge, but for justice. Derek Matthews had built his empire on the pain and humiliation of others, but empires built on rotten foundations always fall eventually, and we were about to give his a very hard push.